Hi, Mark. Thank you for allowing me some time to speak with you today. I know your time is in great demand. I appreciate you sharing some of it with me.
You bet. Happy to do it.
Um, in preparation for our conversation, I researched you up online. It's very expansive. In fact, the Internet Movie Database states that you are regarded as one of the country's top media experts and that you have appeared on hundreds of newspaper, magazine, TV, and radio shows.
Yep, that's true.
Then there's a Wikipedia page dedicated to all things Marc Zicree, where it lists all the movie and network studios you have worked with, as well as countless list of very successful television projects.
Cool. That sounds fun. Sounds like a career.
Yes.
Yeah.
I also researched online how to conduct an interview.
Oh, good. Good.
So the first suggestion was to start with your career. And so I thought, since I follow you not only on your Space Command site, which we'll discuss in more detail later, but also on your YouTube channel, Mr. Sci-Fi. Mm-hmm. And you give the best brief summary of your career for your intro every time you do one. And I thought, do you think you could do a brief intro for us now?
Well, yeah, I can. I mean, basically, I've been a professional writer since I was 19. Started writing my first book at 21, Twilight Zone Companion. Was writing for TV from the time I was 22 or 23. Started in animation, wrote for Smurfs, He-Man, Super Friends, Real Ghostbusters, many other shows. Then I jumped over to live action, developed Captain Power for television, wrote for Star Trek Next Generation, Sliders, Deep Space Nine, Babylon 5, many shows. Rose from story editor to producer, then executive producer. I've done hundreds of hours of network television, and I've also written the Magic Time trilogy of novels, and I recently wrote a book with Guillermo del Toro called Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. Now I have my own studio, and I'm doing movies, TV shows, and books.
That's great. And now I kind of want to take this in a different direction,
Sure.
Like delving more into what's in tune with the theme of my TriumphAnts family entertainment page.
Yeah, sure.
That's all right?
No, sure.
Your intro was great, by the way.
Thanks.
So TriumphAnts is dedicated to perseverance despite the challenges and struggles we go through. Mm-hmm. And to me, that includes the whole community, people with different backgrounds and values, as well as people dealing with family life, single parenting, foster parenting, special needs, trauma, and local businesses. And, dealing with school, finances, and how to succeed in life.
Yes.
And you just gave a quick intro of many of your successes.
Yes.
So were these successes easy to attain, or did you have to rise above challenges to achieve it? Well,
it was all hard work. I mean, it was all life is a challenge. It presents you with endless challenges. And now, of course, we have a worldwide pandemic. So, but I view challenges as something to overcome. I mean, it's interesting because science fiction is, it's a big tent under which a lot of people gather who are outcasts in one way or another. All the oddballs, all the weirdos. I mean, it didn't used to be cool to be a science fiction fan. It used to be you were this outsider. And, so I view my whole life as finding a way to make stuff happen, finding a way to persevere, finding a way to succeed. The thing I love about science fiction is that it, like if you look at a show like Star Trek, it's basically welcoming people in. It said we can create a better future if we all band together, if we see each other as for our similarities rather than for our differences, and if we approach others with compassion. And that's a message that I'm very, very committed to, and certainly in Space Command and all the other things I'm doing right now, that's the dominant principle.
Yeah, and like that's a good feed into my next couple of questions. Mm-hmm. You also run some master classes and a weekly roundtable meeting.
Yes.
I wanted to know first, can you tell us what brought you to teaching and what you get out of it?
Yes. And it really goes back to the fact that when I was a kid, The three shows that made me want to be a writer were Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, and Star Trek, the original versions of those shows. And I started noticing that the writers of those shows were also the same writers as writing the books and short stories that I was reading in science fiction. Theodore Sturgeon, Ray Bradbury, Harlan Ellison, David Gerrold, on and on. And so Richard Matheson, Charles Beaumont. And so science fiction, fortunately, is a literature where most of the professional writers started as fans. And so they have science fiction conventions many times a year where you can actually go and meet the writers whose work you admire. And so that's what I started doing when I was a teenager. And many of these writers became friends and mentors. And so I had a very strong sense of paying it forward, because thanks to them, I got to have my dream. I got to become a professional writer. And so I felt that it was incumbent on me to be supportive of others and to share what I've learned over all the years. And so 27 years ago, I started my roundtable, which is writers, directors, actors, producers, anyone in film, TV, or books at any level of accomplishment. They could just be starting out. They could have won an Oscar. It doesn't matter. Everyone's treated the same. And it started with 6 people, and it's grown to thousands of members all over the country, tons of offshoots. And so then I started teaching classes with Elaine, my wife, who also writes and directs and produces with me, to mentor people. Now, right now we're not actively teaching classes because we're just so busy with all the productions we're doing, all the things we're working on. But I've continued the roundtable, and even during the coronavirus, we're doing the roundtable online, via Zoom, so that we can continue it. And we're getting hundreds of people each week for those meetings. So it's really meaningful, I think, to people.
Yeah, and I was really impressed with how you and your wife, Elaine, seem to care about everyone in participation.
Yes, and because I think the reason I created the roundtable was because there are many things in Hollywood that I strongly disapprove of. I think Hollywood is arrogant often. I think it's rude. I think it blows people off. It doesn't foster talent. There are many things where I think there's a lot of waste and a lot of unnecessary cruelty. So I wanted to create the exact opposite. I wanted a place where there was no pecking order, that everyone was treated equally, with equal respect, as they should be, and where there was no judgment as to who's deserving, who's talented, who should be helped or who shouldn't. If they come with a good heart, then they're welcome. And the idea is that we help each other. The idea is to make things, to actually create. And I think that when you create a nurturing environment, it encourages people to do their best, because it's very difficult. It's very you reveal yourself in your artwork, whether you're an actor or a director or a writer or any of this stuff. You're revealing yourself, and if you feel a welcoming environment, then it's going to encourage you to take risks. And because obviously, if it's a toxic, poisonous environment, it's going to shut you down. And so that's why I feel very strongly that I can be a beacon for others. And that's what I'm doing.
And that's what you're doing, like, right now.
Yes, I am.
Your roundtable is all about everybody helping everybody.
Yes.
And here you and I are having a conversation that you're going to allow me to post on my page, and you're some super famous, highly successful person, and I'm virtually an unknown.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I don't think of it in those terms. I think of myself as engaged in a dialogue with the world, and that can be through a script, it can be through a conversation, it can be through a book. And so I don't have a pecking order. I don't judge people in that way. And that's made my life so much richer, because I don't have that hierarchy, that alpha dog mentality. It allows me to have so many good people in my life. And with Space Command, with the new project, my audience is giving me close to $1.5 million to make this huge, crazy science fiction show. And that's entirely because of my stand toward the world, which is authenticity, kindness, all of that. And the fact that I work hard, people recognize that it's not an easy process, but they're willing to take the journey with me. So I think that's great. I mean, I prefer doing what I'm doing to just working in the studio and network world, because again, the studios and the networks, they are driven by a profit motive rather than just saying, well, this is something cool I want to see exist. So I feel much more kinship with my audience than with the studios and the networks, not the executives. Not that I'm down on them at all. I like many of them, but they just have a different objective than I do.
I think what touched my heart the most in the roundtable was that you went to each and every person and, not only ask them, what are they doing, right? But at the very end, not only were you clapping and cheering, but you asked everybody, is there anything you need?
Yes. Well, I think that's very important, because it's one thing just to say, okay, what are you up to, and have them check in. But ultimately, Elaine, there's someone at the door. But ultimately, the question is, how can you be a force for actual positive action? Because without action, then it's all just talk. And so that's why I say, what specifically do you need? Because the more specific, the better, because then we can actually make stuff happen. I'm doing an interview right now, so just okay. So again, it's about setting I set the tone of the table, and then people then rise to it. I think that if you present kindness, people will emulate it. I think you can be a positive force for good.
And maybe that's why, this is a faith-based page.
Yes.
And family page.
Yeah. Good.
And maybe it's your heart, which is why you're the first person I've had to have a conversation with.
Great.
You're a director. You could probably direct me through this, but I've had some opportunity to have some other guests on here,
Sure.
Both sharing my same faith, but we couldn't quite make it happen. One is a Super Bowl champion from the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then a couple brothers that have their own Christian film studios.
That's great.
And you're the one who said yes.
Yes. Well, but here's my whole feeling about faith. I mean, like, as I was saying just with my roundtable, if faith is converted into action, and if those actions are kind, I think it's great that Jesus said, we should love each other, we should turn the other cheek. I mean, I'm not a Christian, but I grew up Jewish, but I look at how people act, and and I don't care if someone's a Christian, a Muslim, an atheist, a Buddhist, if they can come from kindness and a shared humanity, that's what it's really about. The question is, what are we creating in the world? And so I have no problem with people of faith. I think people of faith are great, as long as they're using that faith to create a better world and a kinder world. My litmus test of everything is very, very simple, which is this compassionate? Is this a compassionate action? Even how we language things, even how we talk to people, are we talking to them with respect? Are we being open-minded? Are we saying, okay, are they coming from their heart? And am I coming from my heart? And am I, taking responsibility for one's own actions, I think is very important. And it's very funny on Mr. Sci-Fi, on my YouTube channel, where people disagree with me. It's like, that's fine. I don't need everyone to agree with me. I don't need a unanimity of opinion. I mean, that would be an extremely boring world. So yeah, it's absolutely. So good for you.
Yeah. Regarding the opinions, since I follow your pages, I've seen some strong negative opinions. I've left a few positive answers to some people's questions.
Great. Yeah, but again, it's just like, I think one has to not be too swayed by the opinions of others. I mean, I love praise, of course, and I'm bent out of shape by toxic negative comments.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I'm here on the earth to get a job done, to get work done, and I have to make sure that I'm on task and that I'm on purpose. So that's the main thing.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
So finally, I want to ask you, what are you presently working on? How is it going? And if there is anything that you need.
Yeah, thanks. Well, here, things are going great. We've shot the first 3 hours of Space Command. We just completed the first hour. It's got a wonderful cast. It's got a wonderful, I'm very proud of the work we're doing. I'm writing and directing and producing with Elaine. It stars many actors from Star Trek and Babylon 5 and Blade Runner and my favorite TV shows and movies. And basically, we're ramping up to shoot the fourth hour. So we're essentially prepping that. We've reopened the studio. We're building alien creatures. We're building an alien spaceship. We're building a futuristic car. And now that with the lockdown and the pandemic, we basically are limiting it to like 1 or 2 people at the studio at most. Elaine and I are staying in the apartment primarily, but within that, and we have a Kickstarter campaign that's already up to $50,000 despite the pandemic. So, and of course, I'm continuing to sell shares in Space Command at $7,500 each, and that's enormously helpful. Every little bit helps. But meantime, as I said, I'm taking this occasion not as a limitation, but rather as an opportunity. So my goal during the pandemic is to stay positive, to stay hopeful, to continue being a source of optimism and positivity for others. And I had this idea of doing a Space Command episode that would entirely be with our actors in their own homes, shooting their own scenes with their own cameras. And here's the script. And I've just here it's up to page 12. And Mike Harney from Orange is the New Black and Project Blue Book and Stars Born, he's in the process of shooting his own scene. And I talked to my other actors, and they're game to do this. And so then it's just putting it together and utilizing visual effect shots we already have in hand, and it's going great. So it's a new challenge that I've never done before to create an episode while we're all stuck in our apartments. But I welcome that challenge. So in terms of what I need, just money. I mean, just money to keep the process going. And so we have a Patreon page. We've got the Space Command Kickstarter campaign, and we've got selling investment shares. And through those different ways of getting money in, it keeps everything moving. We're able to deliver a show for much, much, much less than a network or a studio. And we're actively pitching the show, and Amazon's looking at it now. The CW is looking at it now. We'll see what happens. But I'm not waiting to be picked. I'm making the show regardless. So it's very fun.
Well, as far as crowdfunding goes, I continue to think that your updates are the most routine, the most informative, and you keep everybody up to date.
Thanks. Well, I try, and again, it's always a balancing act between keeping my audience and my backers updated and in the loop, but also continuing to create the work.
Yeah.
Because I'm in the business of creating content, meaningful content, and that's got to be the main priority, but not to the exclusion of all else. So it's every day is filled with excitement.
Yeah, I'll tell you that your communication was so good for the crowdfunding that not only was I a backer, just a small amount, then I did kick in for producer share.
Yeah, that was great. That's terrific. And I really appreciate that, Adam. It's, every little bit helps. See, the lovely thing is that with the studios and the networks, like an episode of Star Trek Discovery costs over $10 million per hour. But with Space Command, 8,000 people around the world have allowed me to get to this point where we've got 3 hours shot. We're shooting the fourth hour. We're doing this new episode just as a freebie. We're doing the audio play. We've got an hour completed. I mean, we've gotten so much more bang for the buck than a network or studio ever would be able to accomplish. They could never do what we've done with the money we've had. And so I love that. I love the fact that you can actually have a very meaningful contribution in terms of both your emotional support and the money to make this happen. It's like it's really fun. I love that relationship.
I will tell you that money does not come easy to me.
I know, and I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that because again, it's sort of like it. Anyone who puts even $1 on Space Command, that's money they had to earn. That's money they had to, it's like they could hold on to it very easily. It's everyone is. I mean, I in no way diminish that. I'm hugely grateful.
Well, it was your hard work and your communication.
Thank you.
I followed every word and most every post, and I saw that you guys were being very productive.
Yes, yes. Well, that's where it's fun to have my own YouTube channel. My friend Glenn Mazzara, who was the showrunner on Walking Dead, I was having lunch with him a couple of years ago, and he said, "You know so much about science fiction. You should have your own YouTube channel." So I came up with Mr. Sci-Fi. So it's fun because sometimes I post at least weekly, and sometimes like now during the pandemic, I'm posting daily, and it allows me to have a very direct dialogue with my audience, and I really like that. So so it's not just having to finish Space Command and that being the limitation. I can talk about science fiction movies, TV shows, anything I want to talk about. And I really am that, and that's a great thing about the modern technology and the modern opportunities.
And that really brings me to the end of my questions. But if there's anything for bonus features, like, I don't know, your numerous editions on the Twilight Zone Blu-ray.
Yes. The great part of this career and this life is that I grew up in an era of such great television. I mean, Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, Star Trek, these amazing shows. And my dream was to be able to write something of that lasting quality, to create something that other people would love and watch over the years and value, and that I would be able to take something from my heart and share it with the world. And the honor, the honor of that, the opportunity of that. I mean, I can look back over a long career and people are still watching all these shows that I wrote for, and to be able to continue and do new work is so rewarding. And yet, so I'm a happy guy. I mean, this is all a dream come true. Every day is Christmas, pandemic or not. So I'm well satisfied, and lots more coming down the pike.
Yeah. So, how did I do?
You did great. You're the best interviewer ever. And so,
thank you. I can't help but to be kind of rigid here, I guess.
Rigidity is not a problem. The thing I discovered when I was doing the Twilight Zone Companion, because I was 21, 22 years old, interviewing these people who were like TV stars and all this stuff, major directors and writers, I learned that all I had to do was ask what I was curious about, because it was just a process of inquiry. And so as long as you're coming with curiosity and asking what you want to know about, that's all interviewing is. It's really pretty straightforward. Where people get lost in the weeds is where they're asking questions where it's what they think they should do rather than what they actually want to know about. And but you did fine. You were great. And
that was kind of my dilemma, as I was reading all these suggestions on how to conduct an interview.
Yeah.
And everybody says you have to reach your audience. And I'm thinking, well, I know he's done all these things, and he has his passions. Yes. But the point of my TriumphAnts page, it isn't to make money. It isn't to really promote huge things. It's about accomplishments and perseverance.
Yes.
Working hard.
Well, here's the thing I'll say about that, because I think it's really important. The great thing about being a writer is that most of my friends came from poverty. Many of them were dyslexic. They had other learning disabilities. They had family problems. My parents were divorced when I was 3, which left a huge trauma. And yet we build careers where we make a career that's meaningful to us and to the world. And we're all sorts of oddballs. And so I think it's great that the world now allows so much difference, and that anyone, anywhere, with any kind of disability can make his or her mark in the world. They can do something that makes other people's lives better. And no one has the right to say to anyone, you're never going to make it, or you can't have that dream, or that's for other people. That's not true. It's like in my career, I've learned that all I have to do is persevere. If I'm just the guy who doesn't stop, the guy who just gets where he's going, then it all works out fine. And so I think that anyone who hears this interview, if I can impart one thing and one thing only, it's if you have something you want, go for it, and just find out how it works. My whole thing is to simplify stuff. Like when I'm talking about interviewing, it's like, just ask what you want to know about. It's that simple. So for me, I'm always looking at what simplifies things so I can apply it. So anyone who listens to this interview or watches this interview, all you have to do is get clear on what you want, find out who's got that, ask them how they got it in detail, and then apply it like a recipe. And if it doesn't work, then try something else until you find what does work. Everything is possible. Everything is doable. And you just have to figure out how to do it. And sometimes you'll be following a well-trod trail, and other times you'll be blazing that trail. You'll be creating a new road, and that's fine too. But just coming from a good heart, coming from your enthusiasms, not hurting other people, being kind. Those are the ways you make a life that's worth living. That's all I would really basically say about that.
And I think that's a great note to end on.
I think so too.
What better to end on than compassion and kindness?
Yeah. Yes. And one last thing, because you're coming from faith, think about Jesus for a second. He wasn't rich. He had like nothing. He could build a table. Okay. And yet he changed the world hugely over 2,000 years. And if we just follow his example of what was his trump card? Like whether or not you believe he's the Son of God, any of that stuff, his trump card was kindness. He came from kindness. He accepted the flaws of other people, where most folks will say, well, that person's, we shouldn't talk to that person, or that person's got sin or whatever. He just came with a good heart, and he was the life of the party. He turned water into wine. That's a good trick. So it's like, but the thing is, it's like, that's a good guy, and that's a loving guy. And he just came from the heart, and he changed the world. So I think that lesson, more than any other, is vital. And so I'm glad you're doing what you're doing, Adam, and I'm glad we're having this conversation.
Well, and I can tell you, I can appreciate what you just said about just coming from the heart. Despite who we are or what we could be. Yes. Right? I work a lot with special needs. I work with Leah's Dreams Foundation for children and adults with autism. And, when we get together, it's all for one and one for all.
Yes. And there's a great quote from Oscar Wilde, who was a very famous 19th century writer. He said, "You might as well be yourself. Everyone else is taken." So if we just accept ourselves and then build from that, it's like, they talk about the glass half full or the glass half empty. If your glass is half full and you want it to be full, just envision a smaller glass that is full and then go from that. We all have our strengths and our weaknesses, and that's okay. That's okay, because in any given day you can do something that's going to make everything change for another person. Just being kind, just helping others, just smiling at someone, that's acceptance of self and acceptance of others. That's really what it's all about.
So again, thank you for having this sit-down conversation with me.
Of course.
I think I prefer to say it as a conversation than as an interview.
Yes, I do too. It's good. It was a good conversation. So great.
What was that?
Well, anything else, Adam? Anything else you need?
No, how would I continue with what I'm doing? I don't know how I got this conversation with you in the first place.
Well, we can definitely continue the, talking over time and seeing where it leads. And if you have other questions, feel free to call me. And and just, know that I'm in support of what you're doing. And, you're changing people's lives. You're making people's lives better. That's all. That's really what matters. So just keep going, and and we can talk further in the days to come.
Yeah, I was actually planning on being down there on the set to visit
Great.
during spring break, but that's off now.
Yeah, and so it'll be, as soon as the pandemic is lifted, then we can plan from there. But if people want to check out what I'm doing, Mr. Sci-Fi, and the Kickstarter campaign has a couple more days, and off we go. There'll be many more adventures to come.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam. We'll talk again soon. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye.